Why is it that when you go silent, truly silent, everything around you starts to shift? Not because you're being petty, not because you're playing games, but because silence speaks a language most people can't handle, especially her. See, she expected the usual, the long text, the emotional call, the desperate attempt to make her understand. Because that's what most men do. They explain, they plead, they talk themselves into weakness. But the Stoic man knows better. He knows that the loudest thing he can say is nothing. No arguments, no please just listen, no back and forth, just calm withdrawal, not with hate, not with anger, with finality. And that's when the shift happens, not just in her, but in you. Because silence isn't just for her to notice, it's for you to reclaim your space. It's for you to stop bleeding energy into people who don't value it. It's you stepping off the emotional battlefield and refusing to fight for a connection that doesn't fight back. That's silence. That's clarity. That's presence. That's discipline. And make no mistake, she feels it. Not right away, but over time, when the attention dries up, when the dopamine rush of your reaction disappears, when she reaches out and gets nothing, that's when it starts. The overthinking, the regret, the spiral. So no, you're not running, you're rising, and you're doing it without saying a word. That's silent stoicism. That's your new power. If you're tired of wasting energy on people who only hear you when you're gone, if you're done proving your worth to someone who never deserved it, hit that like button. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment below. My silence is my strength. Now, let's begin. Number 1, she expected a reaction. You gave her a void. She pushed you not to communicate but to provoke. She didn't want a conversation, she wanted chaos, a crack in your armor, a moment where she could say, "See? He's just like the rest." And when that moment didn't come, when you stayed silent, calm and grounded, that's when the fear started creeping in, because your lack of response didn't look like weakness. It looked like strength, controlled, unapologetic strength. You see, the moment you react emotionally, she knows she still holds space in your mind. Even your anger feeds her ego. Even your pain validates her importance. But when you give her nothing, no anger, no sadness, no energy at all, you starve the game. You deny her the feedback loop she thrives on. And that silence, it becomes a vacuum, one she can't fill, one she can't stop thinking about. Most men blow up. They chase. They try to explain how hurt they are. You didn't. You stood still and watched her unravel from a distance. Not with malice, but with clarity. She expected the storm, and instead she got the void, and the void is worse, because it forces her to sit with herself. Your silence doesn't just confuse her, it confronts her. It makes her question everything. Did he ever care? Why didn't he fight for me? How is he so calm? And when a woman has to start answering her own questions without your reactions to guide or comfort her, she spirals. Not because you abandoned her, but because you finally stopped being her emotional mirror. That void you created, that wasn't nothing. That was everything she didn't expect and everything she couldn't handle. Number 2, silence is the language of power. Powerful men don't speak to prove their worth. They speak to direct their world. And when it's time to reclaim their peace, they don't yell, they withdraw. Because silence is the sharpest language a disciplined man can speak. It creates pressure, it creates distance, it makes people feel what they refused to hear. When you were always explaining yourself, always responding, always trying to be understood, she had control. Your words gave her an emotional roadmap. She knew what to say to trigger you, what to do to pull you back in. But the second you fell silent, the game changed. Suddenly, she had no reference point, no way to read you, no way to decode what you were thinking. And that is power. Stoic silence isn't passive, it's intentional. It says, I don't need to defend myself. It says, I've outgrown this conversation. It says, I've shifted from proving to protecting. When you no longer feel the need to explain yourself to someone who repeatedly disregarded your value, that's not indifference, it's command. That's the moment your energy stops being a gift and starts becoming a standard. And here's the part that wrecks her. Silence forces her to fill in the blanks, to imagine what you're thinking, to sit with the possibility that maybe you no longer care. Maybe you've moved on. Maybe you've already replaced her in your mind. And because there's no confirmation, that uncertainty eats away at her. Silence is power because it gives her no closure, no ego boost, no control, just questions and the weight of knowing she doesn't get to hear the answers anymore. Number 3, stillness reveals more than speaking. When you stop talking, everything else gets louder. Her guilt, her confusion, her insecurity. Your stillness doesn't just unsettle her, it exposes her. Because while she was used to using your emotions as a distraction from her own, your calm now forces her to face herself. No arguments to hide behind, no deflections to latch onto, just silence, just stillness, just truth. You're not reacting anymore, you're observing, and in that stillness, her entire game starts to fall apart. Because people like her thrive on chaos, on emotional reactions, on being able to twist your words into guilt or your pain into control. But when you don't respond, there's nothing to twist, nothing to flip. Just the full weight of her own behavior crashing down on her. Stillness is the most underrated form of power because it doesn't seek revenge. It doesn't shout its strength. It just waits, quietly, unmoved. And that makes people uncomfortable, especially those who once had power over your emotions. They don't know how to operate when they can't provoke you, and that confusion, that inner chaos, it starts to unravel them from the inside. A Stoic man doesn't get loud, he gets still, and in that stillness his energy speaks louder than any words could. You don't need to explain your silence. Let her sit with the weight of it. Let her feel the contrast between the man who once poured his soul out and the man who now guards it in silence. That stillness, it's not emptiness, it's elevation, and she knows it. Number 4, attention is a gift, not a given. You used to hand it out like it cost nothing, your time, your focus, your attention. You gave her front row access to your thoughts, your energy, your life. And she treated it like background noise, because when you give someone something every day, without requiring them to respect it, they stop valuing it. They feel entitled to it. She didn't earn your attention, she expected it, and that's where everything went wrong. Attention is currency, it's value, and every time you poured it into someone who didn't reciprocate, you told her, "I don't need anything back, I'll keep showing up for free." She didn't have to match you, she didn't have to try. She had your focus whether she showed up right or not, and over time, what once made her feel special started making her feel bored, because nothing is more invisible to someone entitled than consistent presence without boundaries. But now, you've pulled back, not just physically but energetically. She feels it. She's not getting the same attention, the same engagement, the same effortless access to your mind and emotions. And that drop, that change, it hits hard, because attention was never meaningless, it was just never priced properly. A Stoic man treats his attention like fire, warm when earned, but unreachable when disrespected. He doesn't waste it on those who can't value it. He redirects it into purpose, discipline, and peace. And in doing that, he becomes scarce. Not because he's hiding, but because he's guarding. Because now he understands the truth. Attention is not a given, it's a privilege. And once it's gone for good. Number 5. Your calm is her chaos. She expected your silence to be temporary, a tactic, a phase. But what she didn't expect was peace. Real, unshakable peace. No mind games, no bitterness, just calm detachment. That's what unraveled her. Because she was counting on the old version of you, the one who over-explained, overgave, overreacted. But that man is gone, and what's replaced him is far more dangerous. A man who no longer needs a reaction to feel in control. Your calm is what she can't process. Not because it's cold, but because it's unavailable. It doesn't orbit around her. It doesn't flinch when she tries to test boundaries. It doesn't lean in when she pulls back. Your calm is untouchable. And to someone who needs drama to feel significant, that's maddening. She thrived when you were off balance, when you were caught in the emotional swings. But now you're steady, grounded, centered, and in that stillness she feels exposed, because her emotional instability has no place to hide anymore. She's left trying to provoke something that doesn't respond, and that quiet, that refusal to engage, it echoes louder than anything you could scream. That's what Stoicism is. It's not emotional numbness, it's emotional control. It's knowing you have fire in you, but choosing not to burn for someone who only wanted to watch you lose yourself. Your calm isn't weakness, it's dominance. And the more you hold that line, the more she spirals. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're finally doing nothing at all. Number 6. The Stoic man speaks through his actions. You don't need to prove yourself with paragraphs. You don't need to defend your intentions or argue your side of the story. A Stoic man lets his actions speak, and when those actions are silence, distance, and self-control, they echo louder than any words ever could. She expected you to plead your case, to try to win her back, to convince her of your worth, but instead you just moved on, quietly, cleanly, without a performance. You see, real power isn't about trying to be understood. It's about no longer needing to be. You stopped engaging, you stopped chasing, and that sent a message more powerful than anything you could have said, because words can be manipulated, but actions are proof. While she was waiting for the breakdown, for the outburst, for the validation that she still held space in your mind, you were already redirecting that energy into your work, your body, your peace. You weren't ignoring her, you were rebuilding you. And that shift doesn't require an announcement. It requires consistency, it requires patience, and eventually it creates distance she can feel in her bones. She thought your silence was an act. What she didn't know was it was the end of hers. Because when a man stops speaking and starts showing, the game ends. There's no more debate, no more leverage. You don't explain what you're doing, you just do it. And the results speak for themselves. Stoicism is quiet, but it's undeniable. And when you live like that, you don't chase respect, you embody it. Number 7. You don't chase, you choose. There was a time when you thought effort meant proving your worth, that chasing was noble, that pursuing someone who kept you guessing was romantic. But now you understand, chasing isn't strength, it's scarcity. It says, you're more valuable than me and I need to catch up. That mindset is dead now, because the man you've become doesn't chase, he chooses. You don't run after someone who disrespects your peace. You don't argue for a spot in someone's life. You observe, you listen, and when the energy doesn't match yours, when the vibe feels unstable, you simply walk. No noise, no anger, just decision. That's the Stoic difference. She expected you to come running, to fold, to respond to every breadcrumb, because that's how most men move, triggered by fear, addicted to hope. But not you. You learned the truth. Choosing someone is power. Needing someone is weakness. You don't choose based on lust or loneliness. You choose based on alignment, respect, effort, peace. Your silence now isn't empty, it's selective. It's you saying, not everything deserves my energy. You don't need her to validate your worth. You've already decided it. You don't need to chase love that can't stand still. You don't run toward chaos and call it passion. She didn't lose a man who begged. She lost a man who evolved, a man who no longer explains why he walks away. He just does. Because he understands the most powerful move a man can make is to stop chasing and start choosing himself. Number 8. Distance forces reflection. When you were close, she couldn't see you clearly. You were too available, too constant, too present. She could take you for granted because she never had to imagine life without you. But the moment you created space, real space, everything changed. Suddenly she had nothing to react to, no comfort to fall back on, no steady voice to calm her chaos. And in that quiet, she started hearing herself. Distance is uncomfortable for the one who never valued proximity. When you were near, she could overlook your effort, your support, your strength. But now the room is colder, the air is stiller, and your absence, once ignored, becomes undeniable. Every day that passes without you reaching out, she's forced to confront what she pushed away, and more importantly, why she did it. You didn't disappear to teach her a lesson. You distanced yourself because peace required it. But that distance, it became the lesson. Because nothing makes someone reflect harder than losing access to something they never thought they'd lose. And she'll try to replace you, distract herself, but the silence keeps cutting through it. And it's in that silence that truth finally speaks. You weren't perfect, but you were present. You weren't always right, but you were real. And now that your presence is gone, all she has is space, and the memory of the man who filled it with substance. A man who gave without begging, loved without controlling, walked away without warning. Distance doesn't make her miss the attention, it makes her see the man she overlooked. And now that she finally sees him, he's not looking back. Number 9. Emotional control is unreadable strength. She used to know exactly how to push you, what to say, when to disappear, how to bait a reaction. Your emotions were like an open book, and she read every page. That's how she held control, not through strength, but through predictability. But now, you've shut that book, you've gone still, and in your stillness, she can't read a damn thing. You don't flinch, you don't explain, you don't ask questions you already know the answers to. You observe, you respond when necessary, and even then, it's measured, calculated, stoic. That's what scares her now. Because emotional control doesn't just protect you, it makes you unreadable, and unreadable men are the ones who are impossible to manipulate. She can't figure out what you're thinking, can't decode your energy, can't tell if you care, if you've moved on, if you're watching her spiral, or if you've forgotten her completely. And that uncertainty, it's the same weapon she once used on you, only now it's in your hands, and you're not even swinging it. You're just holding it, calm, collected, untouchable. Emotional control doesn't mean you don't feel, it means you don't leak. You feel it all, you just choose not to bleed in public. You choose silence over emotional display. You choose presence over performance. That choice, it builds an internal power most people will never understand, and she definitely didn't. She played the game assuming you were weak because you felt deeply. But what she never saw coming was you learning to master those feelings. And now you don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to prove a point. You are the point. Number 10. When you say nothing, you say everything. You could have said so much. You could have broken it down, made her understand, told her how deeply she hurt you. But you didn't. You chose silence, not because you didn't have words, but because you finally realized they weren't worth speaking. Some things don't deserve an explanation. Some exits don't need a speech. And some people only understand the message after the connection is cut. When you said nothing, you said everything. You said, "I'm done." You said, "I value my peace more than your confusion." You said, "This doesn't deserve another drop of my energy." And that silence, that final move, it's what echoes in her mind when she lays down at night. Not the last text, not the last fight, just the absence, the undeniable, unshakable finality of a man who didn't just walk away, he disappeared into his purpose. This is the end of the game. No more emotional chess, no more back and forth, no more open doors. When a stoic man goes silent, he doesn't come back louder. He stays gone, not because he hates you, not because he wants revenge, but because once you learn to sit in silence with your own worth, the noise of dysfunction becomes intolerable. You don't need closure, you don't need recognition, and you don't need her to understand what she lost, because the silence already told her, loud and clear. And from this point forward, your energy doesn't ask permission. It doesn't chase approval. It moves unapologetically. You said nothing. She'll remember it forever. You never needed to scream. You never needed to prove. You just needed to stop explaining yourself to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. That's what Silent Stoicism is all about. It's not about playing games. It's about reclaiming your peace without asking for permission. She expected chaos. You gave her calm. She expected an argument. You gave her silence. And in doing that, you shattered the script. You took your power back not through force, but through absence. You don't have to win her back. You already won the only thing that matters, yourself. This is how real men move now, with discipline, with stillness, with power that doesn't ask to be seen, but can't be ignored. You don't beg. You don't chase. You choose. And you walk away with your head high and your words unspoken, because when you say nothing, you say everything. If you've mastered the art of letting go without breaking down, if you're choosing silence over self-betrayal, hit that like button. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment below. My silence speaks louder than her chaos. This is Stoic Blessing. Stay calm, stay sharp, stay gone.